Welcome to Parenthood Bites, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of 3 incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 59 of Parenthood Bites. We're here with Maryann Vellanikaran, who is an engineering leader in the Bay Area. Hi Maryann, how are you today?
Well, hey, Chow. Really good. Coming off of Thanksgiving and everything. I'm in the Christmas spirit.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yes, I hosted at my house. So It was really fun, but I got very ambitious with making things from scratch. And it was mostly worth it, but on Friday and Saturday, I was like, wow, I'm tired.
Yeah, I do that too, where I'm like, I'm going to do all these things and it's be great and it's be great memories for the kids. And then halfway through, I'm like, why? Why did I do this? And then when I'm cleaning up, washing all the dishes, I'm like, oh God, I shouldn't have done this.
I actually didn't understand because I thought that the dishwasher does the dishes, but there was a lot of dishes. For some reason, I felt like I was doing dishes all day on Friday too. I don't even understand. Did you host or what did you do?
It was just the 5 of us.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, let me try to do the traditional dinner for the kids and make all the sides. But then I did order the turkey that just needed to be heated up. And that was pretty great. I didn't try to make the turkey from scratch, but I tried to make just the sides. And I think that was a good balance because I think I would stress out with the turkey of when is it done? Yeah. Is it going to be okay? Am I going to poison them?
Do my own turkey and then I couldn't. Every time I took the temperature, it was not consistent. So I don't think I know where to take the temperature of the turkey. And then I ended up overcooking it. So we had dry turkey.
See, that's what we stress about, right? Because we're like, what if it's too raw? And then we give them salmonella. So it's better it's overcooked than giving them
an undercooked for sure.
Yeah. But that's awesome. Sounds like a fun Thanksgiving. And sounds like you're slowly recovering from all the cleaning and everything.
Yeah.
So how many kids do you have and what are their ages?
I have 2 kids. I have an 11-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter.
I feel like the last time I spoke to you, they were a lot younger and suddenly they're 11 and 8. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure my daughter was 3.
Yeah. They're getting ready for middle school soon.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow. So what brought you to a career in tech?
Well, it was interesting. So I got introduced to computer science in high school, but it was because my high school, I think when I was in 10th grade, they piloted a computer science course. And so they had never had one before. And so they were going to start having a class. And so the math teachers kind of tapped kids to be in this pilot class. So it was this tiny class, 6 kids. My math teacher asked me if I wanted to be in it. I was like, you think you'd be good for this? And so that's how I didn't know really anything about it, but that's how I got introduced to it. And I did actually really enjoy kind of the problem solving and the type of challenge and building things. But yeah, so that's how I got introduced to it. I'm sure I'm showing my age in some way, whereas we were just computer science was just starting to be a thing when I was in high school. And so because I had enjoyed that. And then they ended up having an advanced class also. So I took both of those in high school. And then even when I went to college, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I signed up for the intro to CS class and just kind of gravitated and was taking more and more of them. And then when it was time to pick a major, I chose to go into computer science.
Cool.
And that led to, my first job and everything. And that's how I got into it.
That's really neat. Did you intern during college as well?
I didn't intern at any tech companies during college. So one of my internships was at a health clinic. It was digitizing some of their records. So I had to do some database work and digitizing work and a minor programming for that. But yeah, I actually didn't have a proper formal tech internship, but I did get a job at Microsoft And that was like my first role out of college.
But it sounds like it is still tech related, even though it's not
Yeah.
at like a tech company, it is still in the space.
Yes, it was like definitely like they were like, oh, you're a computer science major and we need like help with our records. They're all on paper. What do we do? And so I did have to like kind of design also a little bit like how they would organize stuff and what format they would.
Yeah. I remember in high school, I interned at my dad's work. They sold women's shoes to like department stores and stuff. So my dad was like, why don't you build a website? And like, it was not a very good looking website. I can tell you now, there was not a lot of color, not a lot of design, but he was just like, just try it out. And I was like, sure, let me just try it out. What could be the worst that could happen? And I was like, at least I put it together.
Was that
That
like
was my
your first experience with like software and tech?
Yeah, that was like my first kind of job where I went to just like intern with my dad and he would just give me random things to do
Right.
in the website. That was black and white.
So
That's
you
one of the
must have
things I did.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was
Because
fun. I mean, I thought it was cool at the time, right? Like
yeah.
thinking back, I'm like, oh gosh, that website. But then at the time, I was like, look at me. I built this awesome website.
Well, you can reach it from any browser in the world.
Yeah, so why not?
Yeah.
So, how many years have you been in tech when you became a parent?
I guess 9 years.
Got it. So, what was your role at that time?
So at the time that I became a parent, I was at a startup, a small company. Actually, the reason I'm hesitating is because while I was at this company is when I made the leap from an IC engineer to an engineering manager. And I actually just cannot quite remember if I was already an EM when I went on leave or not. I think I transitioned to the engineering manager role when I came back.
So, what was that like?
That whole thing, I think it was really intense. And there's like a lot of things where, in retrospect, if I had more knowledge or wisdom, I would like kind of do them differently. So I was
Right.
at this company. It was like a 20-person startup. So it was like pretty small. And we had an office presence and, a handful of people working remotely. So one of the people working remotely had a kid, but nobody else at the company had a child and nobody in the office had a child. And I was also one of the oldest people. So there was just a lot where there was like no one there who had a child and there was not a lot of stuff in place. Like there wasn't a maternity leave policy in place. We had to like make that for me. And then, had to kind of figure out a mother's room situation. There was like 3 different spaces that I bounced between that I tried. We had 2 conference rooms. So for a while, I took like one of the conference rooms. It was hard to dedicate that to being a mother's room because we only had 2 conference rooms. There was like a janitor's closet, which was actually my preferred location. It was like the one where I feel like I had the most privacy and just kind of nobody ever needed to be in there. It was good. And then we had individual bathrooms where it's just like one room with the lock on the door. So that was like maybe the most comfortable, but it kind of grossed me out to be in there a little bit. But it was nice because I had a sink,
Yeah. Yeah. Like you had paper towels, whatever you needed, right? But then you were also in the bathroom.
Yeah. Kelly, your question made me think about it wasn't just these like details. I think it was my own approach. Like, I think I tried to just be back to normal. I was like my son was born early, like, so he was born a month early. So he was in that like very, very tiny newborn stage for like an extra month. In the moment, I didn't realize that it wasn't always going to be him waking up every 2 hours and needing to eat all the time. So I kind of was like, okay, I guess this is my life now. Like, we're just going to like try to like make it work, just like make it work. Like, I, go back to work and offered this promotion. I'm like, yeah, I'll take it, and I think if I had known that things would get so much easier with just like another month or 2 or another 6 months, then I might have known to like just give myself a little break for an extra half a year or a year before making finish. I mean, it all turned out okay, but it was a lot of intense being tired and working.
Yeah. and like picking up all the new responsibilities for a new role while still having to take care of a newborn at home and then take care of all of those things, right? So then if you had to jump between all the places to pump, then did you have to store your milk in the regular refrigerator or did they have a separate one?
No, I stored it in the company's fridge. So I just kind of had my own kind of lunch bag, a big kind of container that
Yeah.
I put all my stuff in, zipped it up, and like put it in the company's fridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough, because you think
Right.
about it's like you think back and you're just like, holy crap, I dealt with a lot, right? Like you're telling me the janitor's
Yeah.
closet, and like I'm agreeing with you. I'm like, if I was in that situation, I would probably just want to go in the janitor's closet too, because I hated when I was pumping and someone was knocking on the door and needed to use the room, or I could see their shadow outside of there
Right.
just like
Exactly.
waiting, and
Yes.
I'm just like, oh my God, I need just 15 minutes. Like,
Yeah,
I
and I
still have
can't
10
speed
minutes
it
to
up.
go.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Maybe that's
Yeah,
why I was like the janitor's closet's like no one ever needed to be in there. I just,
right.
it
No
was cramped,
pressure.
but it's okay. you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So then with your second child, your daughter, was it a similar situation
No,
or
it was
what
a
was that
totally
like?
different. So when my daughter was born, I was at a much bigger company, established company. I mean, it was at Twitter, and so they had like a super nice mother's room, and I didn't know how nice it could be until I saw
Yeah.
it. I'm like, wait, this is a dedicated room with a dedicated fridge, a dedicated microwave, a sink, lounge chair, a privacy screen. I was like, wait,
Wow.
why?
Yeah.
Oh, and they also had a hospital grade pump just sitting there. And I was like, what?
You're like, what is this? This is amazing.
So that was just
Yeah.
totally different. It was a completely different experience. And then when I was there, like there were a lot of parents. So it wasn't
Right.
like I had to explain anything to anybody. It's like that all the infrastructure was there pretty decently long. Like parental leave was like built in and, it wasn't weird to take it all. And so it was just like a night and day experience.
I mean,
And then
I
I
wasn't,
also had a totally
huh?
different attitude because I was just thinking about, when my daughter was born, I was just way more like, then I had the perspective like, okay, in a year or two, all of this gets so much easier. So for now, I'm
Yeah.
just going to say no to traveling, or I'm just going to have a higher bar for what I take on because I
Right.
know it's temporary. It's not like, okay, this is my life now. Let's just go for it. Try to get back to normal.
Yeah, you've seen what it would be like in a few months. So, did you end up taking your leave all at once or did you split it up?
I took it all at once. And so that also helped a lot with pumping and nursing. So for one, once I went back to work, my children went to daycare. And so it just helped them to be as old as possible before they went to
Yeah.
daycare. Like with my daughter, I think I took 5 months off and then her dad took 1 month off. Like I think, he split up his leave that way. So he took 1 month off. And so then she was 6 months old when she went to daycare.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because they're so little when they go to
Right.
daycare. So, you want to make sure, like, they at least have a little bit of immunity, have some of their shots, right?
Yeah.
As much as you can. So, then after taking this leave of 5 months, what was it like going back to work this time around? And this time you were already a manager there, right?
Yes. So I was already a manager. It was hard but manageable, I would say. So I was still pumping, that I think
Mm-hmm.
with both my kids was one of the things that made transitioning back to work so hard because I think I always felt like every minute of my day, like something urgent needed to be done. Like either I was like in my meetings and doing my work, or it was like, oh, I have like 30 minutes free. It's time. I gotta get all these pumping breaks in, and it's okay. I gotta eat sometime. And so I'd be like trying to like maybe go get my lunch, bringing it to the mother's room so I could like pump and eat at the same time. So I feel like a lot of just kind of the day to day like demands of being a nursing mom and back at work was caused just a lot of logistical demands, like kind of hardship. But I also kind of knew what to expect. I was able to kind of use my calendar to give myself the breaks I needed, just kind of block off time. It got better. I kind of got good at just taking that time. Like, if someone's scheduled over it, like declining or just not being at a meeting or having to cut things off early. So, it's hard, but I did think it was manageable.
Yeah, and it sounds like really just setting your boundaries, right? Of like, okay, this is the time I need to pump, and just doing what you need to do to get that done. It was like you're in this situation where you could eat lunch and pump at the same time, but it sounds like in your first situation, you probably weren't able to, right? If you're pumping the janitor's closet, you probably can't have lunch. So it's like, how do you adapt to kind of make it work for what you need, and really setting those boundaries so that people respect the time you need to do those things?
I do think that one thing that I did sometimes feel a lot like, I am like a robot. Like everything was so regimented. It's like, I drop my kids off at daycare, and then I drive to work, and then I have like an hour of meetings and a pumping break, and then 3 hours of meetings and then lunch. And 2 hours of meetings and then another pumping break, and then I have to like finish up my day, then go back to the mother's room, get all my stuff from the fridge, drive home, do the daycare pickup. I mean, their dad was like doing some of this stuff too, but I guess what I'm maybe conveying is everything was so regimented,
Right.
to the calendar. So that definitely helped with establishing boundaries and like me knowing what I needed to do. But it also made it so I'm like, when do I just get to like chill out, zone out, do nothing?
Yeah, it's always like restrictive too. It's like, okay, I want to go somewhere. I can't go anywhere for longer than an hour or two because I need to get back home to pump, right? Or like, I remember we would go somewhere and then like on the way home, there's traffic. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in pain. I need to get home right now to pump.
Oh my gosh, I have definitely pumped in the car. I've definitely just had my pumping bag, put the nursing cover. I would just like put the nursing cover over the entire apparatus. Like sometimes you get stuck or whatever,
Yeah. I think when my kids were younger, I don't think they had that available yet.
I see.
I think it had to be on the wall.
Oh,
I think
you have
I'm
a battery pack one.
Yeah. And it certainly wasn't quiet enough. I've seen the recent ones. They're very quiet, and mine was
are they?
really loud. So I couldn't do that and be in a meeting. I hear some people can, and I'm like, wow, that's really awesome.
Oh, yeah. No, I never did that in a meeting. I would have to be on mute or something. What is interesting is I feel like right after my daughter was kind of sleep trained, like a little bit older, 1 or 2, is when people started talking about the snoo. Do you know what a snoo is? It's like an automated bassinet. My brother used a snoo. I mean, I witnessed him with his snoo with his firstborn, and I was like, I would have loved to have this. Like, this is just a thing that puts your kids to sleep and then they just stay asleep. Why didn't we have this?
Right. Like we had to hold the kid and rock around.
Them and then
Yeah. We just had a rocking chair. That's what we used as a tool.
Right.
So then what did you do for childcare, and what do you do now for childcare?
So when they were small, they were in daycare. Daycare would be from like 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. So just full day. And then they transitioned to preschool when they were around 3. But now they're in elementary school. So they're in school from like 8:30 to 3. And then they're also in like after school care. So that just they can stay at school until 6. And so it just depends on the day and the activities, like when we go.
Got it. So then you still pretty much like pick them up around 5 or 6. So it's pretty much like a full day for them.
Yeah, pretty much. The crazy thing is, so my son is 11 and he started this year taking the public transit to places. And so sometimes, so he's in various activities. So especially the activities where his school friends are also in the activity with him, he started taking public transit with them from school to the activity.
Yeah.
Just this huge enabler of not like having to do the carpool if who's going to pick them up at 3 and take them to soccer or whatever,
Yeah. And it's also teaching him responsibility, right? Making sure he can keep all his things together, his pass, where is that?
Right.
And like all of those things, right? Yeah. So do you have a cell phone on him just in case you need to reach him? Or
he has a smartwatch. So it's not an Apple Watch, but it's like a kid's smartwatch. So first of all, I can see his location. He can like text and call his parents.
Yeah. He can call you if he needs to and stuff. And you can reach him if you need to, right? And I think for a lot of those, you can also set like school mode when they're in school, so it doesn't.
It does have school mode, so it doesn't
That's cool.
ring. You know, he has one that's like pretty limited in apps or functionality. Like he can call his parents or text his parents, and I can see his location, but there's not much else. This is the big ask for Christmas this year, which is like an Apple Watch. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about screen time. Screen time is like a big hassle.
Yeah. So we won't tell him. What are you leaning towards for your Apple Watch? Are you leaning towards yes or no?
I'm leaning towards no, but I don't know. This is where I think sometimes I struggle with being a firm parent. Like I do imagine that giant smile he would have if he got one.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
last year he wanted an iPad so badly. So he and his sister were sharing an iPad. We got him like his own iPad. That was his Christmas, like his big Christmas present last year.
Yeah.
He does, was over the moon about it.
And this
But yeah,
year
so
it's
the
the
thing with the
watch.
Apple, it's the watch. So actually, it's not anything about the cost or anything that of the watch. It's more like, do I want him to have one? Like, is it going to be, it's like kind of one of these things is I don't want to introduce something that's going to be problematic because it's hard to take it back. It's
Yeah.
like easier to delay. Like, I just don't want
Yeah.
it to be like another screen that
Yeah, and it's a much smaller screen
doing.
too than an
Yeah.
iPad. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing I'll say. Like when my older two got phones, it was like, I would much rather them actually look at their iPad than look at their cell phone because the screen is much smaller. And the intention was not for them to sit there and watch YouTube videos or whatever all day in that tiny screen.
Right. Exactly.
And so,
and it's also the smaller and more portable it is, the easier it is for them to just be looking at it all the time.
yeah. And you're not going to see them looking at it all the time, right? Because it's tiny. So sometimes,
Right.
like, if they're looking, you can't see it unless it's dark. And then you see that little bright light, which is always funny because they think they're being like, they're being good about hiding it. And you're like, I see that light. Okay. I know what you're doing.
Right.
So how has your work life changed since you became a parent?
So I do think my boundaries are clearer. I think before I became a parent, I wasn't one to be like working 15 hours a day, but it's like I could. And now I think it's just much, I feel like sometimes it would be like 5:30, I'd be at the office and maybe I'd feel self-conscious because I didn't want to be the first one or second one to go. And so like that sort of thing would be something I was aware of before I had kids, but now I'm much more like, okay, 5:15, time to go get them. And
Gotta
I
go.
just go.
Yeah.
And so I just don't think about it nearly as much. I think I used to kind of carry a lot more internal dialogue or kind of like internal debate about how much to work. Where are the boundaries?
Yeah.
So now I think like my boundaries are much clearer. And because of that, I'm way better at like prioritizing and being intentional with my work time. Like, okay, what tasks are actually impactful and urgent that I should do, or it'd be important to do them today or important to do them this week, as opposed to just filling all your time with work, which, it's futile in a way because there's no matter what, there's only a limited amount of time. So you always have to cut it off somewhere. So you may as well cut it off at a place that works for you, but then be very intentional with the time you have. So I think that's it. Like, I think it's really the boundaries for like when I'm working and what I'm working on and what's important. I think I'm just much crisper on this than I used to be.
So what has been your biggest struggle or challenge being a parent in tech?
Maybe an extension of what I was saying earlier about being a new parent. It's just really what I miss is like kind of me time. I think the challenge is like not feeling like a robot, kind of like self-care. Sometimes I just get really tired. Since becoming a parent, it's been important to me to work at places where they are supportive of parents. So I feel like I've luckily not had too many struggles of like, there being demands that I'm at work later than I can be or things like that. Luckily, I feel like I've been able to succeed at work. And then I feel good about the time I'm spending with my kids. I come home from work, I really kind of unplug during like dinner and all the way through bedtime. But then sometimes I get back on and pick up some work. Or even if I don't do that, then I go to bed. And so sometimes it's just hard to be like, where is the me time? When can I just kind of do nothing? Just do something for myself.
So how do you carve out that me time?
So the things I do, I don't know. I don't know that I'm great at it, but I do like try to make time to just read, and I've kind of moved to like reading physical books recently. I've been reading like books on my Kindle for like a really long time, but there is just something a little bit more unplugged to me and a little bit more distant from work and my phone and notifications when I like put everything away and just read a physical book. So I do that like right before bed. On weekends, I try to sometimes just book an appointment at a nail salon. It's just something that's just kind of, I almost need to like do something that's like physically away from my house. And I have this like handful of things where it's really like, okay, I'm at the nail salon. I'm just going to put my phone away and like just be here.
Just having that time to really unwind for yourself.
Yeah.
So, what would you say would the biggest benefit being a parent in tech?
Well, I think there's like a couple things that come to mind. So, one thing, I think in terms of the job itself, I do think it's really nice that being in the field that I'm in, it doesn't have these really strict time or place boundaries. So, it can be a good thing and a bad thing, but it's not like I have to be at my desk from 9 to 6 because that's when my core work is done. I do feel like there is kind of some flexibility. I usually don't find it to be a problem if I have to take off early sometimes for a basketball game or a soccer practice, or if I want to chaperone a field trip, I usually can and make up the time somewhere else. So I think that's like one benefit. I think thinking about this question in a different way, I do think working on an engineering team, it's so much about the soft skills, the people, the teamwork. And I do actually think that being an eng leader, like being in a managerial position and being on a team, some of those skills help me be a better parent. Some of my parent skills help me be a better manager. Like they are complementary in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I think I draw a lot of parallels in that because as you're taking care of the team, you take care of your kids, right? So at
Right.
work, you kind of take that into work and
Right.
kind of oversee your team in that way.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things you may struggle with or some challenges you see at your kids' current ages of 11 and 8?
Oh, I think I mentioned screen time earlier. I think it's especially for my 11-year-old, it's just like more and more draw towards like iPad games and YouTube videos. And I think just like some struggles that I know that like experiences that we didn't have when we were kids, where you have the ability to stream highly personalized content at any time of day. I think, sometimes when I was a child, there'd just be nothing on. So you just have to go do something else.
Yeah.
Or like a commercial would come on, so you have to go do something else, but there's really no built-in boundaries, so like all of that has to come from your parents. And so I find that to be tough, deciding what the line should be, holding the line. And so to me, like that's like the biggest challenge with my 11-year-old. With my 8-year-old, it's like big emotions. I actually, first of all, she wants screen time. I think if like her brother wasn't there, like demanding screen time, she might just be equally happy doing something else. But, it's just kind of a lot of like big emotions and asserting independence at that age.
Yeah. So, what are some things you do to set those boundaries for screen time?
I use the screen time feature on the iPad like pretty consistently. So that's like one way that's like easy enough. We have our rules, and this is a struggle for me, is to like not give in to the begging of like, oh, I just need 10 more minutes, just 10 more minutes, please,
Yeah,
like sometimes
yeah.
I'm like, well, if it's just 10 more minutes, okay. But then that 10 minutes goes into another 2 minutes. But it's easy for me to monitor the screen time on the screen time. And we have kind of time boundaries. And it's like you get this much during the day and you got to manage it yourself. And when it's done.
That makes sense. So, the last question I like to ask is just what's something you would tell someone who's planning to have kids or something you wish you knew when you became a parent?
First of all, if someone is thinking about having kids because, they feel motivated to, I'm always like, well, it's absolutely worth it. If it's something you want to do, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of reward. I mean, obviously I have my own bias because I chose to have kids and I love having them. But overall, I think it's just very, very worth it and very, very rewarding. I guess one thing I wish I knew, and I can see this in the difference that I kind of approach my first child and my second child, is like to just give yourself a lot of grace in the beginning. I think every phase of childhood has its own challenges, but that infant and toddler phase is just very uniquely exhausting. And when you're in it, you maybe think you're going to die, but actually it's just temporary. It just like is temporary. So it's just kind of like just trust me on this. In a year, it's going to be better. And then in a year after that, it's going to be better. And then they potty train and then it's totally fine. So I think if I had known ahead of time that, the first couple years are hard, then, something I did differently with my second child to my first child was just that I just said no to more things. I had a much higher bar for what I would travel for. I was much more aggressive about conserving my energy because I just kind of knew it's only like this for a short amount of time. And then you can go back to going to every wedding and all that stuff. But, if you have a 5-month-old, maybe you can just skip the wedding that's across the country unless it's for your best friend, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you become more choosy about what are the things you spend your time on versus what are the things you maybe spend your time on later on, right? When the kid's older, when they can actually go with you. Whereas, is it worth risking it right now?
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you, Maryann, for sharing your story and your experiences with us today. It was really awesome talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It was really fun to think about this stuff and talk about it. You don't really get a chance to talk about it so openly that often.
Yeah, for sure. And I realized I haven't talked to a lot of people about these things. It's the first time we've talked about a lot of these things. So it's really awesome to hear your experiences and everything.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Well, awesome.
All right. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bites. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbites.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, @parenthoodbites.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbites.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.